Hachette Audio presents Waste Wars, the wild afterlife of your trash. Written by Alexander Clapp. Read by Greg Lockett. Introduction. Mayhem in Mesopotamia. A strange arrival. According to an ancient Sumerian proverb, he who possesses many things is constantly on guard. On a chilly evening in late 2016, a few miles from the Turkish city of Adana, a Kurdish farmer named Izzettin Akman was sitting on the second-floor balcony of his concrete ranch house when a white construction truck backed up to the edge of his citrus groves, paused, then dumped a great load of trash along the roadside. Before he pulled away, the truck's driver set a paper bag on fire and tossed it atop the garbage, triggering an outpouring of flames blacker than the night sky into which they ascended. Jidil? Akman leapt up, put on his sandals, and sprinted out along his dirt driveway toward the crackling trash pile, fuming several hundred feet in the distance. Seriously? The trash, by the time Izzettin Akman got to it, was a hissing mass of fire. Plastic is less flammable than wood or paper, but burns more intensely, with a higher heat of combustion, and is at least as capable of getting swept up in a gust of wind and setting some 50 acres and 6,000 odd orange and lemon trees alight. Kure kape! Akman wheeled around, ran back home, located a bucket, then rushed back to the conflagration, which he began dousing with water lifted out of a stream running along the edge of the road. Son of a bitch! Akman kept pouring. After about an hour, the flames started to dampen, then die, revealing with their retreat a bed of thousands of half-incinerated fragments of garbage, not unlike the way the topsoil of nearby Adana gets brushed away by archaeologists to reveal underlying tiles of ancient mosaics. Akman knelt down, disaster averted, to examine the strange, unsolicited new arrival to his farm, turning over slices of candy wrappers and makeup containers with his fingers, before being struck by something peculiar. The writing on the packaging wasn't Kurdish. It wasn't Turkish either. Akman kept clawing through the still scalding plastic, now looking for price labels to be sure. He found several. They were not in Turkish liras. They were in euros and pounds. For decades, Izzettin Akman, a slim, middle-aged man with a face peppered by scraggly red-brown stubble, had, like generations of Akmans before him, made his living harvesting oranges and lemons and exporting them to Europe. Now Europe appeared to be sending its trash in the opposite direction, to the very cusp of his groves, where Akman couldn't help but be bemused by the occasional charred carton of juice jutting out of the pile. That might have been made with my oranges, he told me, as we walked the edge of his farm, where, 6 years after its unceremonious dumping, the heap of garbage, a lumpy mound of ash-cum-plastic that resembled an unmarked grave coated with filthy confetti, still abutted acres of redolent trees. A month or so after the trash was dumped beside Akman's property, something more bizarre happened. For the first time in more than 30 years of farming, the leaves of scores of his citrus trees started turning yellow. Then their oranges and lemons began dropping to the ground. A year later, by which time Akman's losses had brought his family to the brink of serious financial trouble, the trees bore no fruit at all. It turned out that a truckload of garbage set alight along the side of a citrus farm, even if it burns for just an hour, can be the catalyst of much longer-term damage, the environmental equivalent of a delayed fuse bomb. The smoke that continued to waft from the trash pile after its extinguishing hadn't just streaked across the sky for an evening. It had killed off parts of the bee population that help citrus trees pollinate. And the innumerable pieces of half-melted plastic that had washed into the creek that provides water for Akman's irrigation system hadn't merely floated away to some distant place downstream. They had broken down into billions of microplastics and contaminants that circulated toward his groves, before eventually getting sucked up into the trees themselves, crowding their roots like particles of fat in human arteries. Itatin Akman's farmhouse sits just west of Adana, on the outskirts of the bare agricultural village of Küçükçıldırım, 2 hours' drive from the Syrian border, in a lush plain across which snowmelt from the Taurus Mountains to the north trickles out toward the Mediterranean Sea shimmering to the south. It's a stunning landscape. The roads really do smell of fresh oranges. The rocky outcrops are ringed with medieval monasteries and ancient fortresses, and the fertility has been legendary since literally as long as anyone can remember. For good reason, it was here, of all possible places on Earth, that humanity first made the shift from so many tens of thousands of years of a wandering, hunting existence to a settled agricultural one. 100 miles east of Akman's farm sits the mysterious Neolithic mound of Göbekli Tepe, perhaps a sacred monument to that transition. And to the south of it unfurls the riverine lands that once constituted Mesopotamia, where writing was first invented, stars were first mapped, mathematics was first attempted, and civilization itself first endeavored. By the time I met Akman, his orange and lemon trees had begun to recover, but the land around Adana had not. The several tons of trash that had been dumped along the edge of his farm, it turned out, was no one-off. It was the vanguard of something larger, more organized, and more insane to come. In the summer of 2017, Turkey's First Lady emerged on a stage in the capital of Ankara and announced a grand new plan for Akman's nation. Over the next 15 years, Emine Erdogan proclaimed, Turkey would be turning itself into a zero-waste country. Sure, other countries began their pivots to a green future by slashing fuel emissions or constructing wind farms or taxing carbon outputs. But Turkey's transition, Emine Erdogan explained, would begin elsewhere. It would begin within the homes of 85 million Turkish citizens. Turks would be eliminating their trash. True enough, their country's recent track record of discarding garbage had been dreadful. Over the previous generation, Turkey had become as addicted to plastic as any other place on Earth. Its network of public fountains, a tradition dating back half a millennium to the Ottoman sultans who aspired to adorn every community of their domain with marble sebils, kiosks of free-flowing water, had stood no chance against the unrelenting convenience of a water bottle made of polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, introduced to Turkey in 1984, and which, by the early 2000s, Turks were purchasing in the tens of millions every day. Street bazaars that sold fruits and nuts to shoppers bearing cotton sacks had given way to supermarkets that inserted every conceivable purchase into a low-density polyethylene bag, those plastic bags that are so flimsy you can see through them, which by 2010 Turks were discarding at a 35 billion annual clip. More than 90% of all this plastic was ending up in landfills, the countryside, or the sea. A travesty captured in real time in Fatih Akin's Garbage in the Garden of Eden, in which the acclaimed Turkish-German filmmaker, returning after a long absence to his grandparents' picturesque tea-growing village in the mountains above the Black Sea, chronicles a plan to convert its outskirts into an open-air dump site. No one in the village wanted the landfill. The authorities schemed behind their backs and zoned it anyway. The result is the entirely foreseeable problem of plastic sloshing down into town, leading Akin to a grim, albeit self-evident, conclusion. Trash is the global excrement of our society. That Turkey, assured First Lady Erdogan, would soon be just another sour memory in the long history of Anatolian tragedies. Her campaign would affect a clean Turkey.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?